This is this is day 5 of this July 2024 7-day sesshin. This path that we're walking this week and more generally is often referred to in the text as the way, or the path. There is a poem, a prose poem that I've read from before, but it looks like not in a while. It's translated from the Swedish by Christopher Middleton, and the author. The author is Lars Gustafsson, and it's called The Ballad of the Paths in Västmanland. And this is, he's talking about, is the way that we're on, the Zen tradition. Under the visible script of small tracks, gravel tracks, forest tracks, often with a grass ridge in the middle, between deep ruts hidden beneath twigs heaped in clearings, still distinct in crumbling moss, another script runs, the old paths. They lead from lake to lake, from valley to valley, sometimes deeper furrows, more distinct, and sturdy bridges of medieval stone carry them over black streams. Sometimes they evaporate on bare, rocky ground. You lose them easily in swamps, so imperceptibly that one moment they are there and the next not. Sound like sesshin? They do go on. Always there's a going on. You only have to seek. The paths are obstinate. They know what they want. And with that knowledge they combine considerable cunning. You're walking east. The compass points insistently east. Faithfully, the path follows the compass like a streak. All is well. Then the path veers north. And north there's nothing. What does the path want? Soon comes an enormous moor, and the path knew it. It leads us around with the certainty of someone who knows what's what. It knows where the moor is. It knows where the hill is too steep. It knows what happens to someone who circles the lake to the north instead of south. It has done it all, so many times before. That's the whole point of being a path. It came to be made long ago. And now we'll return to the teachings of national teacher Muso Kokushi, reading from the book Dream Conversations on Buddhism and Zen. And here these teachings are, he lived in the 13th, 14th century. Many Buddhist scholars do not actually aspire to enlightenment, but really study to enhance their own reputation and prestige and to feed their personal pride. When they get some knowledge, they set themselves up as teachers and fool the ignorant. They tell people their bit of knowledge and interpretation and give formal approval to any scholars whose views correspond with their own. This is a big mistake. From what I've heard over many years from people who are in academia, things haven't changed much from the 14th century. So much quarreling and pride among scholars, as among all people, but there are it's not always so different from it's not in the case of Buddhist scholars. It also may not be so different. Isn't sometimes different. It's a huge difference between the words and the practice. There's an old saying, a picture of a cake doesn't satisfy hunger. Or the version I like is a menu doesn't satisfy hunger. But there are those who are content to work on the menus their whole life, and those people can do a lot of service. Where would we be without translators and even scholars can really help us stay on the path, or at the very least get started on the path. Here's a very different topic. He says, attraction and aversion are two feelings that keep people within the bondage of ignorant, repetitive behavior. That's such a rich grouping of words. Ignorant, repetitive behavior. Attraction and aversion are just what we desire and what we dislike. Our likes and dislikes. Those who seek only what pleases them and try to avoid what displeases them are acting in this way because they do not realize the nature of the world. For those who know the nature of the world, lack of complete satisfaction or fulfillment in things of the world is in itself advice to cultivate detachment. If people don't crave to be pleased, they will not be displeased. What causes mental suffering is not the environment, but the mind itself. It's pretty self-evident, isn't it, that our desires will never be completely fulfilled. There will always be, no matter how much we get, there will always be left wanting in some way. Even if we somehow were to manage to find the perfect mate and the perfect job and the perfect house and the perfect neighborhood and the perfect car with the perfect little children, would it be enough? Would that be enough? There's always something more we want. So it only makes sense, rather than trying in futility to satisfy our every desire, is to reduce our desires. Work at a practice where we dissolve our attachment to our likes and dislikes, to our desiring mind. This is not a moral issue. It's not wrong to have desires. It's just foolish to think we can ever satisfy them all. This is so wonderful about the Dharma. It is so practical. We're not bad people for having desires. We all have them. It's our attachment to them. It's the degree to which we insist on having them fulfilled, the degree to which they manage our lives, these desires. This just causes us misery, dissatisfaction. And then we learn that the real problem is not the desires, it's the attachment to them. It's our dwelling in our thoughts of getting this, getting that, or not getting this, or not getting that. That's it. When I would give introductory workshops at the center, I would touch on this matter of desire, which is so basic in early Buddhism, and someone every once in a while, someone in the workshop would say, "Now, wait a minute. What about the desire for enlightenment, huh? What about that?" Oh, I never thought of that. Roshi Kappa used to say there are base desires and there are exalted desires. And of course the aspiration to come to awakening for the sake of others, even that, it's a desire. It's an exalted desire, isn't it? For the sake of others. But even that very desire, when applied through practice, will dissolve it. That is, will dissolve the idea, the thought of enlightenment as a goal that we have to grasp at. Goes on, the founder of Zen spoke of two ways of access to awakening, by principle and by practice. Access by principle refers to direct unification with the fundamental, without depending on training. Since this is not possible for everyone, the founder, the Buddha, also taught 4 practices. The first 2 practices are designed to counteract the tendency to be distracted by feelings related to pleasing and displeasing situations. In displeasing situations, you counteract irritation, resentment, and lament by viewing such situations as products of your own disagreeable behavior in the past. This does work. If we find ourselves in some kind of mess, some painful situation, to just briefly, not making a whole practice of it, but briefly remind ourselves that this is just the effect of previous causes that we were very much part of. Or I like the very simple way of expressing karma. What karma means is what goes around comes around. And then that's displeasing situations. And it says, in pleasing situations, favorable situations, you counteract complacency and attachment by reflecting on the impermanence of all conditions. So, just simple little example, the absolutely exquisite weather we're having today. just ideal. But how long was it going to last? I think these kinds of little interventions that Muso is suggesting, they start to kind of arise on their own without through long enough practice. They just come on their own. We don't have to make a big deal out of them. We just become aware on a kind of a tissue level in situations of very favorable, we're very grateful for, that it's not going to last. And the opposite. And we learn this in the most kind of molecular level through the practice, by seeing ourselves go through these alternating periods of hardship and ease. We come to really assimilate in an experiential way the impermanence of everything. His next advice here: it is not necessary to get rid of worldly feelings in order to work on the fundamental. Those who are keenly aware of the precariousness of our situation as human beings and the brevity of our opportunity to awaken, and who use this awareness to hone their will, are not distracted from the work by worldly feelings. Feelings that arise because of circumstances can actually be used to fuel the urgency of work toward the fundamental. I used to think early on, I'm sure I wasn't the only one, that at first I had to clean up all what I then called bad feelings. Had to purify my character in a real basic way in order to really work effectively. It helps, for sure. It helps to hold to the precepts, to not be hurting other people in all the ways that we can when we violate the precepts. It helps us work more effectively. But it's not, we don't have to somehow flush the feelings, problematic feelings out. We have the ability to see through feelings, get beyond feelings while we're sitting. And to think also, another misunderstanding is that we have to really arrive at some really pure nature, pure character, in order to come to even an initial awakening experience. No. What we're doing is a concentration practice. We can have different character flaws, afflictions, and still bring this concentration to the point that we break through our ordinary consciousness. There was a time where I might think, my karma's too heavy. It's an idea. What do we know about the depth of our obstructive karma. Some obstructive karma, as I was saying earlier, some obstructive karma can be a prod. It can spur us to want to get beyond the whole matter of karma, cause and effect. It's a little device of the ego to let us off the hook. Well, look at the problems in my personal life. Look at what I do. It doesn't matter. Especially in Sesshin, where we have this tremendous force, collective force that can enable us to penetrate through these, what would be obstructions. Feelings that arise because of circumstances can actually be used to fuel. So let's take one, grief. The grief of having lost someone. That can be a huge spur to practice. Fear. He says preliminary methods of softening worldly feelings are taught for the sake of those with insufficient determination. This does not mean that work on the fundamental is to be undertaken only after worldly feelings are ended. Well, what world is that where you don't have feelings? But preliminary methods of softening worldly feelings. That means softening the grip of worldly feelings. So psychotherapy can definitely help us pull out some of the wedges and blocks, emotional blocks that obstruct us in our sitting, get in the way. Metta practice works as well. But work on the fundamental is of a different order. It's in the case of metta, which I do have much respect for. In the case of metta, we're trying to radiate loving feelings, loving kindness. Whereas in Zen, we're not trying to create any effect. We're just sitting with the mind on the koan or breath practice or shikantaza. When we're working hard on the breath practice or koan, let's say, or shikantaza, it's not creating an effect. We don't have anything in mind. We shouldn't be having anything in mind that we're trying to, some place we're trying to get to. Another one, envy. Envy, that comes up in Sesshin sometimes. Again, comparing oneself to others. We don't have to get rid of envy. We just have to not dwell in it. And then it's as if it's not there. If our attention is not lingering on feelings of envy or anger or grief, then it need not be an obstruction. Even while you call to mind ways of softening worldly feelings when they arise, still you should not give up work on the fundamental. It is said that people with intense determination for enlightenment neglect even to eat and sleep. Such people do become tired and do become hungry, but they rest and eat in the midst of the practice and therefore are not hindered even when sleeping or eating. I'm reminded of this verse that we recite at the end of each night in Sesshin. Even as night darkens the green earth, the wheel turns, death follows birth. Strive as you sleep through the night. It's talking about the work even while sleeping. This is not any kind of thing we can understand rationally, how to strive as we're sleeping. It goes on in some way through our striving during the day. If people who lack such determination go without eating or sleeping, they will become ill. This will hinder their practice, so they are encouraged to eat enough to overcome hunger and sleep enough to overcome fatigue. This does not mean, however, that they should forget the work while eating or sleeping. Well, eating is easier to understand, how we can maintain the awareness of the practice while eating. In the Three Pillars of Zen and the letters of Basui, Japanese Zen master Basui, he just says flatly, do not fast. It is a non-Buddhist practice. I have done some fasting, never for more than a week, so I'd be surprised if Basui thought that was a mistake to fast for a week. It seems to me it's kind of, I'd like to know the context in which he said that, do not fast. Joshu, the great Joshu, who's reported to have lived to the age of 120, attributed his long life to having done a lot of fasting as a young man. When I was training in Japan in Kokushi, I asked Tangen Roshi, what about this Basui saying, do this flatly, do not fast? And it won't be a surprise. His answer was, well, it depends on what he means by fasting. What kind of fasting are we talking about? Fasting can veer into eating disorder. But during Sesshin, what I've learned is, the little fasting I have done in Sesshin, you feel lighter, clearer. A certain kind of energy is liberated when we're not eating. But in my experience, you pay a price in not having the same type of energy available to you, especially if you're working on a koan. You don't have the thrust, the penetrative power. I didn't. I'll just make it about myself. I couldn't find that same penetrating power working on a koan. The best thing is what many wise people have said is the best way to fast. The best kind of fasting is just to eat lightly, moderately, whether you're in Sesshin or outside Sesshin. An ancient Zen master gives this advice: when you walk, watch the walking. When you sit, watch the sitting. When you recline, watch the reclining. When you see and hear, watch the seeing and hearing. When you notice and cognize, think, watch the noticing and thinking. When joyful, watch the joy. When angry, watch the anger. That's the end of the quote. And then Muso Kokushi says, working in this way will lead to awakening. In other words, just mindfulness, noticing, awareness, not being completely embedded in whatever you're doing, mentally embedded, but having this awareness. I once read that that's one way to understand the word Buddha. Not the historical person, but the word Buddha it's our fundamental awareness, our noticing. It means presence of mind, of course. It's the opposite of just being lost in thought. There is a popular practice commonly found in Buddhist sutras and Zen writings that consists of looking upon all phenomena as if they were dreams or illusions. This practice is in the realm of method and is not an ultimate teaching. Again, it's in the realm of causation. Doing this thing will bring about that. Whereas, strictly speaking, Zen is, it's working on the fundamental. We're not trying to get from here to there. At its purest, in Zen practice, there's no there that we're trying to get to. There's another one I've never tried, which is contemplating a corpse. This is from centuries ago. Just read a bit about that. There too, you're trying to contrive something to make yourself more aware of the precariousness, impermanence of the human life. He goes on, secular literature and folk sayings use the image of things being like dreams or phantasms to mean that everything is transient. But in Buddhism, the implication is that phenomena are ultimately insubstantial, but nevertheless conditionally manifest. Okay, let's clarify that. That ultimately nothing is. Everything is without substance. Everything is shimmering atomic and subatomic particles. Everything is in flux. That's the non-substantiality of everything. No matter how physical, how hard it may seem to be. That's certainly the body. But then balancing that is the awareness that in these conditions, and the conditions being such as they are, well, they're real enough. If we bang our head against the rafters in the attic, that's pretty real in its own way. You say the difference between a horse and a man is that when the horse bangs its head on the beam going out of the barn, it won't do it again. I'm pleased to report that when I went back up to the attic, I didn't do it again, but we'll see about next time. Oh yeah, just many people listening, some of you wondering what the heck I'm talking about. The day Sesshin started, last Saturday, I did this, and it turned out to be nothing but a lot of blood, and so I had to put a bandage on. It was a black, I've never seen a black bandage before, but that's the one that was at hand, and everyone was laughing that it looked like a yarmulke and that I had maybe switched traditions. It didn't have to have it on long at all. It is said that people who are truly on the way do not discuss judgments of others. This does not mean that they make judgments but suppress them. It means they do not see people in terms of self and other. A sutra says, the nature of reality is like an ocean. You should not say there is right or wrong. I've heard from quite a few people in Dokusan, beginners to sesshin, who are aghast at some point in sesshin. They're aghast at how much silent judgments they're passing on other people. So much of our thought activity only comes to consciousness. We only become aware of it in the silence and the many hours of sitting of sesshin. And it can be quite appalling what goes on in the mind. It's so vitally important that we become aware of these things. This knee-jerk habit so many of us have of judging other people. If people view the world in terms of distinctions between self and other, they will inevitably make judgments of right and wrong. If they entertain views of right and wrong, they are not true practitioners of the way, even if they refrain from expressing their views. Notice it says, if they entertain views of right and wrong. I would see that. We can't stop such things from just arising on their own momentarily. What we can do is not feed these judgments that we notice all of a sudden, not dwell in them. He says, rather than try to refrain from discussing judgments of others, therefore, students of the Dharma should turn around and reflect, who is it that speaks of others' right and wrong? You notice he says, twice now, he says, do not discuss judgments of others. Okay, that's important. We say that in those two precepts, 6 and 7, the 6th and 7th of the 10 cardinal precepts, a resolve not to speak of the faults of others. And the other one is a resolve not to praise myself and disparage others. But I always wondered why it isn't more of the thoughts. So who is it that thinks of others right and wrong? That's where it starts, the thought. Then it becomes speech. This is exactly the practice of who am I as a koan. Who is it that's doing this, thinking that, feeling this, tasting that, judging, or what? Same thing. Bringing it back to the subject. Not getting caught in the objects. We can so easily get caught in others, thinking about others, even if we're not speaking about others. A sutra says that people, quote, take the physical constitution to be their own body and take the reflections of sense data to be their own mind. Well, in other words, just this thinking that our true self is just this body-mind complex, when actually it is far, far more than that. And then he says what this sutra means is that what ordinary people think to be think to be their self is not the true self. And if you do not know what your true self is, you cannot see others as they really are either. thought I might trot out this story of the salt doll, which probably I've gotten more positive feedback from than any story I've ever read each time I do it. It's, I think it goes back to, maybe it originated in Japan, but it's not long. A little doll made of salt had a long, dry journey across the desert. And when she finally arrived at the seashore, she had never seen it before. She did not understand what it was. So she addressed the sea, "What are you?" The sea replied, "I am me." The doll said, "I don't understand, but I do want to." So the sea said, "Touch me." At this, the little doll of salt ventured cautiously to put her toes in the water, then quickly pulled them out, and was shocked to realize that they had vanished. "But where have my toes gone?" she asked. The sea quietly replied, "You have given something in order to understand." Well, it may have been the tone of the sea's voice, but the doll somehow trusted what the sea was saying, and so she ventured into the water a little farther, and then a little farther, at each step losing more of herself, disappearing more and more. Finally, a big wall of wave engulfed her, and as she was completely vanishing, she said, "Now I know what the sea is. The sea is me." I think this is particularly useful as a parable. Is it a parable of that we can draw from when we're facing a state of no thought, and that can happen more easily late in sesshin than early in sesshin, where suddenly there's nothing in the mind. And it can be frightening. And we can withdraw. We can contract. What's going on? It's I would say it's usually, from what I hear, it's usually frightening. But then what do? We after we collect ourselves, then, all right, we're still here. It's a pretty fascinating place there. So let's get back to the koan, to the practice, and find our way back to that state of emptiness, no thought. And then again, we may get startled and pull back. But then if we persist in moving into this realm of no thought, no mind, then it is the most extraordinarily marvelous, liberating place we could possibly be, is dwelling in that state of non-dwelling. But all of this is just words. It's up to each person to confirm that extraordinary place. Our time is up. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.